Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. Today, I bring you another interview with another fascinating individual. Today, I'm talking to Earle Birney. Now, Earle is a practitioner of yoga, so it's a fairly broad description. Somebody who does yoga, but I think Earle, you teach, and he also teaches meditation and is developing a online yoga platform. Anyway, we'll hear more and all about that later on in the conversation. But Earle's backstory is fascinating, and I cannot wait to ask all the questions. So welcome, Earle. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Roseanne. I'm looking forward to having some time and conversation.
Yeah. Oh, it's always good to talk to other yoga practitioners. And I know that you've been a yoga teacher or yoga practitioner for, 25 years plus. So you have some experience. And I was also looking at your website, and that seems like a really beautiful platform that you offer a lot of yoga teacher training and so on. Is that sort of right?
Yeah, we develop content that we work mostly through distributors. And so a lot of groups in Asia, and we'll deliver content, yoga teacher trainings, meditation trainings, comprehensive programs, 4 days, month-long programs. And and like that. So, a mix of meditation, mix of yoga, mix of philosophy. It's a lot of philosophy also.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, a really important thing that yoga practitioners, just your casual yoga practitioner, someone who just likes going to yoga class a week, once or twice a week, misses out on a lot. And I think that it's a really important thing to weave that in because, as obviously the word yoga union, it's that bringing together of everything. And I think that a lot of people use it as a physical practice. But I think, to be honest, the majority of my listeners, if they are yoga practitioners, they are seekers, and so they understand that, they get that.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about you is what you bring to this platform, what you bring to your yoga and your meditation is quite an extraordinary experience. So I want you to tell me the story about how you got into yoga in the first place. What happened that got you into yoga?
Way back in the day. Yeah, I think I'll try to make it somewhat condensed, but I think I grew up with a natural questioning why. What is this all about? Why am I here? What's life about? And just not really being attracted to what I saw. The previous generations, the examples that were left for me were, really traditional. Get married, have a house, have a career, and work 50 weeks a year. And
Mm,
I just that just didn't attract me at all. And so there just seemed like there has to be something more than that. And I think through high school and university, that led to a lot of experimentation with psychedelics or drugs and alcohol. And that led me into accessing different states of mind that I found interesting at the time.
mm.
And a very double-edged sword, led me down some paths that weren't productive. Um, but I think it was this only way I knew to try to answer like what's going on, what's what's the meaning.
Mm. Yeah,
And
sort of drugs, they sort of it opens your mind to more possibility at the same time as kind of closing a lot of doors. So it's in one way it's very opening, and another way it's very restrictive. It's
yeah,
a delicate dance with psych.
yeah,
Yeah.
it became a habit. It became a party drug. It became a so. But it was that search and that question. And then I was getting right to the end of my university degree. I had 4 months left, and it was like, oh my God, I'm done. I have to go do this thing I'm supposed to do. And
And your life.
got a,
Yeah.
I took out a student loan and I got a ticket around the world. 4 months left in my degree. My parents, I'm sure, were extremely unhappy with that decision. And what I felt was the most important thing was my time. that was what I couldn't replace.
Mm.
Life, it felt like life didn't have meaning. And that's why everyone was giving meaning to life. Here's the meaning of life. Life really felt meaningless to me. And therefore we should just have fun. And
Yeah.
that was kind of my path. And that freedom was really important. And mostly the freedom of my time because it was irreplaceable.
Mm.
And so I was traveling and um, I ended up in New Zealand. I was selling drugs to make enough money to travel, and I got arrested. And I remember the first day in prison just thinking, well, this is interesting. You know, on my search for freedom, here I am
Locked out.
in a place where I no longer have that so much. And and I recognized that I wouldn't have to worry about relationships or money or cooking or clothes or rent or anything that I normally am consumed with. Worrying about was kind of gone.
Mm.
To watch, you know, it's not freedom from negative thoughts and negative emotions. To watch what the mind fills in with all of the afflictions. And but it was there that I started. After about a year, I ran into somebody that we started doing a little bit of yoga, and someone else that eventually I found that had a he had a teacher, a Buddhist teacher, and I started studying Buddhist philosophy, and that really set the course for the rest of my life, really.
Mm. What what an extraordinary thing that yeah, having your freedom taken away from you actually gave you your freedom back. It gave you your purpose. It gave you your path, I suppose, in a way.
It really did. I think it was ideal as a place where I would slow down enough and
Yeah.
allowed me to go deep enough where I kind of stuck with it.
Mm.
There was just enough time to focus on especially the philosophy for me, because it was really the philosophy I was into. I didn't want God. I didn't want a philosophical system even. I didn't want like a moral system. I didn't want somebody else's morality. I was quite happy with my own.
Mm.
And and then I ran into the Buddhist teachings, and I remember I studied really hard to find the place where I could be. That's why I don't have to believe in this. There's the whole. And I really studied to find where everything fell apart. And it didn't. It just kept on coming together and coming together and coming together in a way that was so fascinating to me that it was like, I want the next page, you know, give me the next page, give me the next page. And it really did start me on a totally different life course.
Mm. So how long were you in prison for?
Just under 2 years,
Wow.
which we call bed and breakfast. Anything under 2 years was bed and breakfast.
Because I mean, it's a really fascinating thing because to hear you talk about it, I mean, most people like prison is supposed to be the ultimate punishment, right? You know, and your freedom taken away. But it actually gave you a lot. And it, you know, when you say that, you know, you don't have to worry about, you know, what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, what you're going to do, what you're going to, you know, like there's a part of that sounds quite attractive. It's like, oh yeah, I'd really like to not have to think about what I'm going to eat for supper tonight and go out and buy it and show, you know, make the money to go and buy it to then cook it and then, you know, that's all sort of wrong.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend it,
No,
but
I'm sure. I mean, prison, I'm sure, is not a fun place, and it is pretty scary, I would imagine, as well at times. And yeah, so, but it gave you the time and the space in your life to actually find what was really important. And so so that brought you the philosophy side of things. You came out of prison and at what point did you find, I mean, did the meditation come alongside the philosophy? When did
it,
the yoga arrive? When did those
yeah,
kick
it
in?
did. What I ran into mainly was a guy named Michael that brought his teacher in. It was a Tibetan teacher, Lama Shedrup, And he brought him in a few times into the prison. And that was fascinating. His English wasn't great, but that was really my first introduction to Tibetan Buddhism. And then this friend, Michael, he found this, I don't know how he found it, but he's like, we should do these courses by this American guy named Michael Roach. And so we wrote, and they sent in these packages of audio cassettes, 10 audio cassettes, and they were called the Asian Classic Institute courses, which was a 15 course program that mimicked the traditional study that a geshe would do in the Tibetan tradition. And that was the main study that I did for 7 years or so, listening to these audio cassettes.
Wow. And
And
that
this was
that was
before the internet.
philosophy, or what was it, what was within that? Was it just all the various teachings? What did it consist of practically?
Yeah, philosophy, Buddhist philosophy.
Right.
So Buddhist morality, ethics and morality, theology, um, karma and emptiness, teachings on compassion and love and wisdom, different schools of thought on the nature of reality,
Oh,
teachings on, there's a subject called Lojong. Lo is the mind, and Jong is to train the mind, which means to train the heart. So it's these beautiful teachings on training our heart,
wow.
trying to get over our self-cherishing, or thinking of me, 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 me.
Mm. Yeah, what an extraordinary. I mean, there are so many beautiful teachings out there, ancient, beautiful teachings that we all would benefit from so deeply. And their life is such that we just don't have the time, the space, the awareness to bring that into our lives. So so you've left prison, you've got these teachings. You said you studied those for like 7 years. So where did you go to study all of that and practice
I
your
was living in Canada at that time, and I
wow.
didn't have a community. I would go to some centers a little bit, but didn't really connect. And there was no online, there was no Zoom calls, there was no Zoom
Yes.
teaching.
So you were just out there on your own doing this.
I
Wow.
really was. And then well, a bit longer story. I went back to finish my degree,
Well done. Your
and
parents must be very proud.
yeah, and that took me to New York to do a kids camp. It was a recreation degree, and I got there, and I was supposed to be the boathouse guy. I had my water ski. It was a summer of sailing and water skiing, and I got there, and they fired me on before the camp even started. And so I phoned the one number on these cassette tapes. I said, I have a month. Can I volunteer? And they said, yeah, go out to the main center. And there I met some people, and they told me that the teacher, his name's Geshe Michael Roach, he was in a 3-year retreat, and I didn't know he was teaching. And this guy said, no, he's teaching twice a year. And so I went out to the desert in Arizona, and heard him teach from the middle of his 3-year retreat, of a silent retreat. And that was my first time really seeing him teach. And then that was my main teacher. And so then I got involved with that group, and ended up moving to Arizona. We started a retreat center in Arizona.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of backtrack to
Loved a
it
lot.
and ask a stupid question here. So he was doing a 3-year silent retreat, but he was still teaching. So how does that work?
Yeah, he would come out twice a year, and
Out of silence or out of okay,
um, out of silence for that teaching. And so he would come to when
right.
we do retreat, it's called a psalm in Tibet, and you create a border, like a boundary. And so he was set up on their side of the boundary. There were 6 people in the retreat, and he came out blindfolded, so he didn't see his students, and gave 4 days of teachings, maybe 2 hours a day, hour and a half a day. And and they were very beautiful. Very first time I was in the desert, very stark, profound. Uh, the desert is so ancient, so
Mm.
quiet and mystical, and I was pretty young, and the first time I was really ever experiencing a group and a teacher like that, and also kind of the first time I started doing yoga, and I was so enthralled. It was the first time I'd met people that were my age uh, in a dharma scene, also a very sober scene. I
Mm.
had just quit drinking, and so it was amazing to be around people my age that were thriving in yoga, in meditation, in philosophy, and still staying up till 2 in the morning, debating and discussing and it being sober. And it was just like, oh my God, I didn't know this existed. It
And
was
people.
fast.
Yeah. So, I know that you did a silent retreat as well. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So at the end of that 3 year retreat, Geshe Michael came out and we eventually established a center and we did another 7 year program in an advanced study program in Tibetan Buddhism. And then at the end of that 7 year study, we did a 3 year retreat. About 39 of us started, 35, I think, finished, which is a fantastic ratio.
A very good ratio. So just talk me through exactly how this works. So you're living in community with 35 to 39 people. It's completely silent. So you're basically, I would imagine, you're either studying or in meditation or perhaps in yoga practice all day, every day. And you're a well-oiled machine because everyone kind of knows what they're doing and you're communicating, but not with words. So, like pointing, go and get the carrot, go and get carrots for me or whatever. I don't know. I mean, and I mean, you've got to eat, you've got to sleep, you've got to, um, so
It's
first
amazing.
of all, I'm interested by the practicalities of it, and then I want to know actually what it really meant.
Yeah. The infrastructure to support a 3 year retreat of 40 people is substantial.
Yeah.
So we had a big piece of land. It's 1,000 acres. It's called Diamond Mountain Retreat Center, Southeast Arizona. And we had to, you know, find 40 retreat sites on the land. We had to build roads to those cabins. We had to bring water to those cabin sites. And then everybody that did the retreat was responsible to build a cabin.
So you built your
And
own cabin, so everyone had their own individual cabin.
everyone had to figure it out. I would say probably a third built their own, a third or 2/3, had the money to have a contractor. And um, so that was an amazing year of a community trying to come together to build these cabins and get into retreat. And it's such a it was such a frenetic rush by the end that I didn't have really that much time to think about. We had trained for 15 years or 7 years, but I remember we went in January 1st, 2011, and it had snowed in the desert, which is extremely rare.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this big last gate that we walked through, and there's a bunch of people at the gate, you know, our friends kind of waving goodbye and walking through that gate, and the desert is so still and so quiet at night at the best of time with a layer of snow. It's just
Yeah, holy.
completely silent. And I was the last person to walk through, and then the gate closed and then the silence starts. And I remember waking up that first morning just being like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? What am I going to do for 3 years? And it was we'd been so busy that it had been a distracting almost. And then it was like, wow, it's
Mm,
here we are. It's the real deal now.
yeah.
So the structure was we would have we called it a deep retreat. So a period of deep retreat. And that deep retreat to begin with was 4 months. And then we would have a break, deep retreat, break. So that was the general structure.
Okay.
And deep retreat was 4 weeks, the break was 4 weeks. And then gradually that deep retreat got longer and longer, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. So the deep retreat aspect, I didn't really leave the vicinity of my cabin, a little 360 square foot cabin. And I just, the direct vicinity, that was the boundary.
Okay,
And
so who's feeding you?
yeah, so every 2 weeks we would get a delivery. I'd walk down to a box,
Okay.
fill out this magical little form of, you know, 6 carrots, head of broccoli, loaf
Yeah.
of bread.
Okay.
And yeah, just a little checklist.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then 2 weeks later, that magically turned into food. Never saw anybody, didn't have to communicate with anybody.
Okay.
It was incredible support. It was an amazing, huge effort from the caretaking staff and the sponsors. And
And then when you took your break after you'd done, however much time in deep retreat, you'd come out of deep retreat, and would you then share your experiences and communicate and talk with your fellow retreatees? Or would you, what was those moments like? Because that must have been like really profoundly extraordinary coming out of it.
yeah, it, you didn't, everyone was up to able to do what they wanted. So if people wanted to kind of not see people, they didn't have to. Um, so in general, we would come together right away for ceremony, still in silence. A lot of us learned sign language, so there was some communicating or written notes. Um, most people were pretty good. There was, especially for the first 2.5 years, I would say, pretty minimal talking. And
What does it do to you psychologically? I mean, I know people who've been to like a 10-day Vipassana, which is a kind of silent retreat that anyone could do. And it's just 10 days in community with other people and sitting, meditating for hours at a time. And from what I've heard from the experience of my friend who went on one, she went slightly doolally in that, there was a lot of stuff came up for her, but other people were all going through a lot of different things as well. Like a lot of stuff came up in the 10 days. Now, I appreciate that you guys who were doing this had probably, that's just like easy. That's just like nothing. Doing a 10-day Vipassana thing would be easy. And you'd done probably long periods, maybe months at a time before you gone into this 3-year retreat. Um, but tell me about what you did during the time that you were in deep retreat. Was it meditation and studying or whatever? But also what learnings did you take? What happened within you? What were
yeah.
the transformations?
Mhm. So the times of deep retreat were probably 12 hours of practice a day. So the structure was 4 sessions. So starting one before sunrise, finishing the next one before noon, starting the third session. What do we do? Finishing the third session before sundown, and then the last one before midnight. So there was a 4 session structure template. Each of those sessions, 3.5 to 4 hours for me. And so that would be meditation, um, recitation, prayer. So there's like a guided meditation, like there's a sadhana, like a prayer book, like a guided meditation that was quite long. If I was to read it, it would probably take me front to back 45 minutes. So it's this structured meditation, and then stopping and meditating on compassion or the teacher or love, emptiness. And so, each session was kind of structured in that way. So that was the basic structure. And then yoga outside of those 4 sessions. Um, I was practicing a lot of Ashtanga. So hour and a half, hour 45 minutes every day, which was great. And every single time there's still that mind that's like, maybe I shouldn't do my yoga today. Like every single session, there's still that fight to, I should really clean the house. The house is spotless and I should clean the house. I should go for birds but what, there was a lot of things, but what I remember at first was a lot of what happened for me at first was just guilt and all of the crap that I had swept under the rug for 37 years. My emotional world that I had chosen to be too busy to deal with.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard to be too busy when you have nothing to do for 3 years. There's I have nothing I have to do. And so then in meditation, it's like, well, you're going to look at me now. Are you going to look at me now? So at first, it was a lot of processing, the things that I had done that I wasn't very, that were weighing on my conscience, I think. Things I had, like simple things, like things I had said to somebody, or how I treated somebody, or having been involved in an abortion earlier in my life. And it ended up being a lot of working through that and using purification practices and trying to recognize where I had fallen down in my life and forgive myself for that. It felt like scrubbing the blackboard had a bunch of stuff on it,
Yeah.
wiping that clean, or sandpapering out a groove from my soul, almost, of the things that I had done. It was purification at first, like 9 months. I mean, where that was really the main feeling of that. And then I remember feeling like I could do this forever, but I need to move on. I could beat myself up forever.
Yeah.
And I need to, the board is clean, or it's clean enough. And it felt like, what it felt like was retreat. And I don't just mean 3-year retreat. 10-day retreats are beautiful. Month-long retreats are amazing. In some ways, they're harder,
Mhm.
you know, but there's like this take retreating from our world where there's this constant reinforcement of who Earle is, the brother, the yoga teacher, the son, the youth worker, the reinforcement of that identity that happens in community, that happens through work, that happens through relationships. All of that gets removed.
Mhm.
And then it allows this freedom to break out of that identity that's reinforced constantly. And it felt like the recognition that I had been in a box that just opened up into a vast landscape. And then a lot of things kind of at that 9 month mark really shifted from that process of purification, that opening up into a vast landscape, the degree of stillness that I'd cultivated, and then moving into, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to cultivate? What are the qualities that I want to become?
Yeah.
And so there's this shift of creating and becoming. And that was a big transition for me.
And then another 2.5 2 and a bit years to work that out and shift to being the person that you wanted to be. But
Mm.
I'm wondering, as you're saying that, and as I'm describing that, it's all very well, because I know in my practice, in my meditation, in my practice that I do on my own, I have this idealized picture perhaps of myself and these qualities that I want to embody or that I think that I can embody. And then I go out into the real world and someone triggers me and I'm right back again and again. So you're doing this, but you've not got any triggers around you, nobody pushing your buttons and winding you up, or no real world stress, like having to pay the bills or whatever to deflect any of, or to try it out, I guess, to try out this new version of yourself that you are creating. So when you came out of retreat, how did the real world hit? It must have been an absolute mind blow.
Yeah, it's a retreat sounds idyllic in that way that there's no triggers. Triggers will find us,
Yeah.
but the process that you describe happens within that structure of a deep retreat and then a break, deep retreat and a break. And so what it felt like to me was there was this there's this movie called Crash. It's a terrible movie. I don't recommend it, but it's set in LA and it's like this guy is in a gang and he the start of the movie is a monologue and he said, when you live in LA, when you're living here, you have to build up a wall to protect yourself. Everybody wants something from you. Everyone's out to get you. Everyone's trying to take something from you. So you got to build these walls of protection around you. And then he's like, and that's why we got to crash into each other just to feel something.
Yeah.
And then the whole movie is just insane gunfights and car crashes. But
But
it feels like,
that's a bit of wisdom right there, because it's very true. Yeah.
yeah. And so retreat felt like taking down those walls and having an opportunity to develop as you know, the qualities of the heart and to open our heart and to try to access like a little more fearlessness in being compassionate. And then stepping out of that deep retreat into seeing friends, I found the first day was very magical and very beautiful. And we'd get together and have ceremony and celebrate. But the second day, something would happen. Somebody was sick, something simple, or someone had left retreat, or someone was having a problem. And I think when we take that wall down and we're heart is more open through all of these practices, we feel more. And the pain of somebody else is much more visceral. And then to watch the tendency to build that wall back up, to not feel so much. And then to recognize that of, oh, I've just stepped back from connection because it feels too much or for fear of not being big enough for that situation. And being like, oh, I'm not, that's not it yet. And then going back and retreat and taking some bricks down again and then coming back out and trying to last a little longer. And then the big taking down of the retreat and stepping out into the world. Um, in the same time as being very joyful, yeah, we transitioned out over 3 months. So we started seeing people, we started talking. Uh, it wasn't, you know, go
Yeah.
right up to the edge and then open up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was and it's very interesting. There's no text on coming out of retreat. There's text on what to do in retreat. There's text on going into retreat. There's very little written on coming out.
That's surely that's the most important part, because you have to be able to take what you've learned into. That's very interesting that there isn't. I wonder why that is. Is it because it's very different for everybody?
I don't know. I think it's because it's over. Like you've done the thing. So I
Yeah.
it's also there's just not a lot written about long retreat in general.
I mean,
What are
to be honest, I've never heard of anybody doing a retreat as long as yours, which is why I was really drawn to speak to you because I'm like, this is extraordinary. But it's also something that is not accessible to everybody. I mean, I would imagine that the number of people in the world who have done a 3-year retreat, okay, it's tiny. Um, and those people are out there living their lives, integrating into society. And, you go about doing your business, you have your online yoga business, and you have all of this stuff that, creating content. It's a very modern sounding thing that you're doing. That's what people do these days, create content. But not everybody can go and do this kind of retreat by a long shot. Like this is very, very thin layer of cream on the top that you are in. And if I'm honest, there's a small part of me that goes, well, it's kind of it's
selfish?
slightly, no, not selfish. I was going to say slightly demoralizing to the rest of us who aren't doing that, who can't even conceive of doing that because we have lives and pets and jobs and all of these kind of things that keep us stuck in the real world. And we're trying our best in our, listening to a podcast on the way to work or whatever, to find some truth, to find some peace, to find, to uncover some layers, to work out little tricks and ways and methods of going into this for, as you mentioned, self-forgiveness. Like, everybody's got that messy blackboard up there filled
Right.
with all those complicated equations and the scribblings out and the things that we wish we'd never done or seen or known. And we're trying amongst everything else to get that board clean and to find out who we truly are and what our real path is and how to live authentically and compassionately and all of the things that you have learned how to do. So how do we not, not feel inadequate next to you? How do we not feel demoralized and like, oh, well, I have
I
no,
don't
I
know.
can't go for 3 years.
Just spend time with me. No, I mean I think it's a common question. People ask, or it seems selfish,
I don't
or
think it's
just kind of
selfish.
or just kind of what you're saying. Like I I have a partner, I have a kids, I have a job. I don't want to do 3 years, or so what is it? And I think it's a daily practice or a weekly practice, whatever our practice is, and to establish what is our spiritual life look like. What are my goals in my spiritual life? It might not be 3-year retreat. It might be my goal is to meditate 20 minutes 3 times a week.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
and that's my core values that I want to live up to. And then how can I've identified my core values, and then how can I live up to that unfailingly? And then I studied with a meditation teacher for a long time. His name was John Yates, or 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 Master Kuladasa, and he wasn't a huge proponent of 3-year retreat, um, but he talked a lot about if attaining states of deep meditation are important, we're going to have to prioritize it.
Mm.
I really think you know we identify what we want in our spiritual life, and then we have to dedicate the time and the energy that will allow us to fulfill those goals. And if deep meditation is something somebody wants to do, or to play piano to a certain level,
Yeah.
or to do anything, then we have to do what we need to do that. And so I think about, instead of meditating, my goal is to become meditative. And so what's that going to require of me in my life? And then it's going to be some sort of daily practice or weekly practice of some sort. with John, what we would do was once a month we would go to his place and we would spend a day. We would meditate, walk, meditate, have lunch, meditate, walk, and that was a huge, huge help for me. Sometimes it's been in my life just one day a month, keeping silence until noon. Now I think a huge thing is how do we get off the technology?
Oh, yeah.
Or can we spend one day a week technology free till noon?
Mm.
And all of these ways that we can become meditative, if that's a goal in my life, if that's something that I value and I see the benefit, then there's going to be some choices I have to make. I can't go out partying till 2 and keep my meditation at 7 scheduled.
Yeah.
I constantly be distracted by technology
Mm.
if I want to uh, be meditative in my life. And so I don't think the goal needs to be 3 years for everybody. I think the goal we need to identify what we want,
Yeah.
why we want that, and then create a life that supports our intention. And I'm really into kind of simplifying things now. So having a manageable practice that's inspiring, that's rewarding, having community that supports me in that endeavor is incredibly important. Um, the community that you're creating and like things like that, I think
Yeah,
they're
it's
valuable.
fascinating that because I feel very strongly that community is like a really, is a really vital part of being human. And you took yourself out of community like big time. Um, but even just going to a regular yoga class and seeing the same people every week, even if you're not friends with them or mates, but they're just familiar faces, you just go hi, but that relationship builds. But going to a being in community and finding community is a really interesting one because I feel like there is community to be found online in that in that black mirror that we have in our pockets every day. Um, and there is peace to be found on it if you know where to look. But there's just so much other noise out there on it that it's really hard. So it's discipline. And I feel like this this retreat that you've done, the work that you've done, like prior to going to retreat, then going into retreat, the discipline that you have is so strong. That tapas, that fire of getting to, being that disciplined. What is your take on that? How do you feel like you find your discipline, or is it come naturally?
Both. I mean, it's been all over the map over 25 years, but briefly, I just want to sidetrack. I've never felt more community than in retreat with 37 people. It was the most beautiful connection to people that, we had been in community for the 7 years leading up. So I knew most of them very well, but
Okay. Yeah.
even in silence, well, I'll sidetrack. Remind me to come back to your question.
Okay.
But one of my experiences was the awkwardness of silence is very bizarre to be in community in silence. And what I found was if I'm writing a note to you and I give you the note and you don't really read it, I know. But you and I can talk and I can be looking over here or distracted with my phone or washing the dishes.
Yeah.
And so our communication, the biggest,
This is
one of
very,
the biggest things I realized coming out of retreat was how distracted people are. And the smartphone thing had exploded in those 3 years. And to see people can't make eye contact anymore and have a conversation where we're connected with our eyes. And in retreat, I think there's a high degree of mindfulness, I would like to believe. But the method of communicating in sign language or in notes, you have to be present and engaged. And I found that an incredible amount of trust was built between people. And out of that trust was love. And that love can be a little bit of, look, it seems like you're saying one thing and doing another thing. What's going on? It can be, you two people need to go sort your shit out because it affects the whole. In the retreat, there's a joke like when someone farts in retreat, everyone smells it. And it's true. Like when the two people are when someone's having a hard time, if I'm having a hard time in New York, no one cares.
Yeah.
I'm anonymous.
Yeah.
In retreat, if someone's sad, everyone feels it. And so there's this incredible community that developed and love that comes out of silence in a way that we, stepping back into those 10-day Vipassana retreats, into the half-day retreat, into getting rid of technology for 5 hours in the morning, having a 3-day retreat, it allows us to an opportunity, like coming home and turning things off instead of turning things on. Turn off the TV, turn off the computer, turn off the Netflix, turn off the Spotify, turn off the, I don't know, newspaper, if anyone
Yeah.
gets those anymore. And then in that silence, retreat gives us an opportunity, no matter how long that retreat, to get past the anxiety of silence that we normally fill up with noise. Because there's a discomfort in silence that if we are willing to get beyond that discomfort to see the beauty what lies on the other side, that's the magic of retreat. And it doesn't need 3 years. You know,
You could just
we
do a three-day retreat on the yoga retreat and just leave your phone in a box. Yeah. But that getting through that discomfort thing, that's the thing that we're really bad about. And I'll bring you back to my question about discipline, is like having the discipline to push through that discomfort to the other side. It's like doing certain pranayamas, like you feel like your head's about to fall off, but if you push through, it's worth it, and you get the results. But it's the same thing, like, that getting over that discomfort. It's like giving up smoking or something. It's like 3 weeks of real hell, but you've got to get through that to get to the other side, right?
Yeah, so I would say discipline for me comes community,
Mhm.
clarity on my goals, and then whatever I can do to develop a habit.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, and a lot of my practice now is trying in to erase the line between formal practice and the rest of my life. So I think of, okay, I meditated, I can cross that off my spiritual to-do list, and now I've done some yoga, I can cross that off, and like those things are practice, and now I'm living my life. And to
Yeah.
really erase that paradigm of, when I meditate now, instead of thinking, when I've been teaching recently, it's been, the last thing we'll do is, okay, how are we going to transition from this form of meditation into the next form of meditation? This form is going to end in a minute. What's the meditation object for the rest of our day, or what's our practice for the rest of the day? And to carry, in Tibetan, it's called Chulam Ki Namjor. It's like, what's our all day long practice?
Mm.
And so the more I can have little things that keep me connected to my practice throughout the day, which, one of the things for me is I have a book that I try to look at 6 times a day, that I have for me, it's like ethical principles I want to look at and keep. So it could be yamas and niyamas, for instance.
Mm.
It's 10 o'clock. Oh, there's my book. I
Yeah.
have I
And it's like keeping everything very present and keeping that mindfulness that you had in meditation, because I think a lot of people go, right, well, I'll do my 10-minute, 15-minute sit and meditation. It's a guided meditation with an idea, or it's just a silent meditation that they do on their own. And then it's like, right, then I've done that and I go and get on with the rest of my life. But it's taking that lesson and taking that feeling of peacefulness or whatever it is that you've attained during that practice of whether it be yoga or meditation or whatever, even just reading of an interest, philosophy book or some kind of self-developmental book, whatever it is that you keep it present. And that in itself is a good thing to think about, I think. Just keeping that mindset.
As many tricks as we can have. Like I have a spiritual book that I put on top of my coffee grinder. Every morning I have to go through the book before I can get coffee. And so it's like, okay, so, or I leave something around, usually a book, like where I tend to just zone out on social media.
Yeah.
So I think for me, how do I keep a discipline? It's community, it's clarity on my goals, and then reminders throughout the day. Like I noticed you have a bracelet on. And so for me, if I can imbue this with some sort of representation of, okay, every time I see this, I'm going to remember to try to be mindful for the next 5 breaths. Then
Now I have a tattoo that was my reminder. And I was like, I need it right there so I can see it a lot.
yeah, as much as we can do of that and trying to connect going from outside to inside or inside to outside or transitioning from sitting to walking or walking to running or sitting to lying down, like there's or eating or all of these opportunities to use a trigger to remind us of, oh, let's kind of check in. What's my motivation? I'm about to stand up. What am I doing? Well, I want to go make some tea. Oh, maybe my partner wants some tea. And so connecting that transition, which happens throughout the day, to check in on my mindfulness and my practice and to try to get, there's a punk rock band called Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. And I kind of relate, like, that's so much of my mind is me, 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 me. And so if I can
Yeah.
have these triggers in my life, okay, I'm going from sitting to standing because I want some tea. Oh, maybe my partner wants something also.
My colleague or yeah, I love
So
that.
the more we can do that, I think fills in our life hopefully in a way that reflects our core values.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think that that's something that everyone can kind of imagine doing in their day. I think the book on top of your tea mug or your coffee grinder or beside even beside the toilet, that classic, the toilet book. The sort of something that hangs from your rear view mirror that reminds you so that when you're driving, it's sort of I've got like a little Ganesh that hangs from my rearview mirror, and I'm like, oh, hi Ganesh. Every time I'm driving, he's there. So I completely relate to that daily reminder. But listen, we've been talking for a really long time, and I have loved this. But I want to know, like, what are you? Obviously, you've got your God, I'm so bad. I didn't write down your website here. But what is it that people can get from you if they listen to this and they go, I need a bit of Earle in my life, and I love the sound. What do you offer? What have you got?
Yeah, right now what I'm really loving and what I'm doing is creating a couple communities, and we're meditating. And one is with an organization called Three Jewels, uh, three spelt out, so threejewels.org. It's a meditation yoga studio in New York. So I teach online there Tuesday, Thursday in the morning, 9 o'clock Tuesday, 7:30 Thursday. And it's a half hour. It's all by donation. And the people that I'm meditating with, that group, we've been doing it for a while now, a couple of years, a lot of consistency in the practitioners. And we use a paradigm of the 9 stages of meditation that every mind goes through from a guy named Kamala Shila, who lived 1,000 years ago. so that's the framework, and it's really what are the skills and techniques that we can use? What are the problems of meditation? What are the solutions? And what are the skills and techniques that we can do to progress in our meditation? What's the roadmap? Because I think a lot of people are frustrated, and
Yeah.
it can be very frustrating.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's really important because I think that is, people do struggle. Yeah, there's a lot of
So I do
need
a
of
lot of
that.
with the my main job is with the Yoga Studies Institute, and we do a similar practice club on Wednesdays, yoga on Monday, meditation on Wednesdays, and then a bunch of courses through the Yoga Studies Institute. So that would be the main place to check
Perfect.
out.
That's what
But
I'll put the link in the bio for,
I'm
and I'll put your Instagram.
very very bad at Instagram, but I'm trying
Join the club. I'm
to get
awful,
back.
shockingly
So
bad
I do
at it.
post on. That's my that was my New Year's goal, was to embrace Instagram.
We try, but not. Oh, yeah, it's a difficult one. So that's great. They can get hold of you. They can, on Instagram and on your website. And it feels to me like you've have you written a book? It feels like there's a book inside you. Just
Yeah,
mm, yeah,
it needs to come out. I agree. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. It's such an amazing story. I've loved talking to you so much, Earl. I feel like you've got huge amount of wisdom, and I love what you've shared with us. It's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so, so much.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the time. It's been really joyful. I appreciate it.